What if I told you that divorce is not only emotionally draining, it is a very, very difficult time in everybody's life. However, it is also sometimes the financial catalyst that you cannot get over. And that can happen in areas that you did not even dream financially you could really disrupt and put yourself in a bad place. And so today we're going to discuss the different ways that divorce can disrupt what is maybe a very good financial plan you have in place, and what can you do to safeguard yourself from this. Now, this is all inspired from a Business Insider article that I read that I thought was really good by a lady named Kelly Maria Korducki. I apologize if I said your name wrong. It is called Millennial Divorce is Tearing Through Savings and Financial Cushions. And so it is talking about how millennials are being hit with divorce much harder than the baby boomer generation. And she goes through different reasons why, and she also talks about different scenarios that are out there. However, a lot of people will take a look at this video and say, well, I'm not going through a divorce, so I don't need to watch it, right? I don't intend to have to use this information either. However, I'm going to tell you the reason I'm doing this video right up front. If you don't know what your financial picture looks like, you have no idea what accounts you have have no idea where they are, you don't know how they're titled, you don't know your beneficiaries on them, you don't know how your house is titled. Are you on title? Are you not on title? Are you on the mortgage? You don't know how any of that works. Your financial picture is very hazy. This time of divorce or some kind of tragedy, maybe somebody passing away, is going to be 10 times worse. So if you get anything from this video, I hope this motivates you, not scares you, because I do not believe that fear is a great motivator, but I hope this motivates you to start putting all of your information together, understanding how everything works, understanding how things are titled, understanding beneficiaries, all of that kind of stuff is so important. So that's the bottom line for me doing this video, is not to tell you go get a divorce. It is not to tell you you don't need this information because you're never getting a divorce, or you're single so you don't need to know this stuff. The ultimate theme is know what is going on with your financial world. So many people don't. They walk around with these blinders on and a haze, and it's maddening in my respect. I just personally, I don't know how people live like that. And I guess I can say it's not that I don't understand how people can do it, because I was like that. But I woke up many years ago, and now I sit back and go, wow, I could have been in a lot of trouble. I could have been in a really bad situation if I didn't know what I know now about our financial picture. And that's not just because I'm a financial advisor, which I am, by the way. If you're new here, hi, I'm Lisa, I'm a financial advisor. But this is also just something that our society has made it okay for, unfortunately, women in particular, to say, I don't want to have anything to do with our financial life. And that's okay in society world. It's really not okay. You need to know what's going on for your own protection, because the ultimate goal for most people is financial freedom, whether it's retirement, whether that's just being able to live your life and not have to worry about finances, whatever financial freedom means to you. However, you cannot get there if you have no idea what your financial picture looks like, and you're okay with that. So if anything, I hope this motivates you to get there. So this article was really interesting, mainly because it goes through lots of different stories. And I won't go into all the different people in here. It was, like I said, a Business Insider story. I would highly recommend it. I'll make sure I put the link down in the description. However, a lot of the people had things that we did not necessarily have to deal with the baby boomer generation. Student debt, the expenses skyrocketing on around divorce. This one lady said that they had, well, here's a quote from her. All $70,000 went to my divorce lawyer, which was the equity she got from her home, from selling her home with her spouse. She said also the house is now worth 3 times what we paid for it, and I'm still renting. So she lost all of the equity in her home to paying for attorneys to get divorced. She has no money left for equity for home, and there's opportunity costs that happen there because she had just been able to stay in her house. It would have been worth 3 times more than what she sold it for. Because during a divorce, there's not time to wait on stuff. Everybody is in such a rush to just get divorced, get away from each other, get separated. There's no thought about timing on anything. Now, am I saying for sure, like, she would have known that? Of course not. You know, housing prices have gone skyrocketing at a not normal level the last couple years. I mean, how is she supposed to know that? And am I telling her not to get a divorce because of that? Of course not. But you do want to make sure you understand cost and opportunity cost lost that could happen. Another one that's highlighted is a financial advisor. He does what I do, but he just didn't seem to understand the amount of legal fees, splitting up the assets, home loss, all of that, and what it cost. I mean, he said it could have cost him up to $300,000 if he actually put all the numbers together. That's an exorbitant amount of money, especially for millennials. Millennials, yes, the older millennials are in their early 40s, but there are some millennials who are 35, 30, starting to put together some finances for themselves, starting to feel like they're making it, and this can just cut them down. And another woman that was highlighted said, you know, her mom was her safety net. If it wasn't for her mom, she wouldn't have been able to get through the divorce, all the expenses and everything that was associated with it. So I think what's different about the millennial story is how expensive it is to get divorced nowadays. It's just expensive in general to live your life, to rent, to buy a house, to just get groceries now are just so expensive, and attorney fees are so expensive. And not just the attorney fees, court fees are unbelievably high nowadays. I don't know why, but they're so high now. And so people end up spending just tons of money just to get separated, just to divorce each other. And that is not well known. Nobody really talks about that. And so you do have to have some money set aside for this. Otherwise, you're going to find yourself pulling from 401ks, pulling from retirement accounts, paying all these taxes, all these penalties on them. Because millennials are under 59 and a half, they're going to have the 10% penalty on these retirement accounts for the most part, pulling from these. And it just can be just a nightmare. And not just that, if you're pulling from your 401k, let's say you pull $50,000 from your old IRA, just make it easy. Pulling $50,000 from your old IRA to pay for legal costs that you were not expecting. Not to pay your spouse off, just to pay the attorney and the court fees and all that stuff. You know, that $50,000 gets tacked on to your income. Let's say you make $100,000. Now you're at $150,000. Plus you have a 10% penalty on that $50,000. Now you're at a different tax bracket, I would imagine. I didn't look at this, but I'm sure it's very close to that. And now you're paying higher taxes on your overall income. Do you have the money to pay that? You might not. So now you've got to have a payment program with the IRS. It can just snowball into a nightmare if you are not prepared for what can happen. So one takeaway is just know that the divorce is going to half your net worth, and it's going to double your expenses. Not only are you going to have to deal with expenses on your own because you're not sharing expenses anymore, but you're going to be adding the divorce fees to it. Now, there are specialists in this area that do financial planning. And I believe divorce financial analyst is one of the designations for that. And this lady says, when people get a divorce, they're cutting their net worth in half. This is going to have a drastic impact on their savings over time. And she's absolutely right. It could be something that you can never get over. Now, again, I'm not telling you not to get divorced. I just want you to have a realistic expectation of what could happen. So what can you do in this case? Make sure you have some money set aside for this. Don't just get mad at your spouse and say, I want a divorce, and not be prepared. That can put you, that emotional decision can ruin your financial life. It really can. Another thing to consider is that courts nowadays assume financial equality, which, if it exists or if it doesn't exist, that's kind of what they assume. And that can hurt you if that's not the case. You know, a lot of times women will step out of the workforce to raise kids, maybe go back and get a lower position or work part-time or things like that. They don't have the same time and opportunity to put away money in their retirement, or they have the viewpoint that he will take care of it, so I don't need to worry about our finances. So they don't know what's happening. They don't know how the kind of accounts work and how they separate and how they can access the money. All of that stuff. I've heard of situations where women will get, you know, they think they're getting such a good deal because they're getting this huge chunk from their spouse's 401k. They roll it into an IRA, and then they're told later, you can't access this. It's got a 59.5 deal on it, so you're going to have to pay income tax and a 10% penalty on this. Well, that didn't turn out very well for you, because really, if you're trying to get $500,000, you've really gotten maybe $350, because you have to deal with all those taxes. I'm just making up numbers. It could be more than $350 or less depending on your tax bracket. But I'm just saying, people don't think about that kind of stuff, and that stuff is very important. Another thing people don't think about after divorce, I'm just going to slip this in here, she doesn't talk about this in the article, are beneficiaries. They don't change their beneficiaries from their old spouses. I have also had a friend who this happened to. Her spouse did not change her to the beneficiary. Her new spouse had his old spouse on there, and when he passed away, suddenly all of it went to the old spouse. And legally, that's what what happens, because she was listed as beneficiary. So update your beneficiaries. Please do that. That is so important. You know, and so some other things that you want to think about is safety nets. If you hit a point where you're just bleeding money for this situation, you decide to go to the divorce attorney rather than do mediation, or mediation's more expensive than you thought it was going to be, or whatever situation you have. Also do some research on the different types of divorce out there. Some are definitely cheaper than others. What fits for you depends on your situation, of course. But where are you going to go to? Is it mom and dad? Are they willing to help? Are they not willing to help? How much help do you want from them? How long are they going to have to help you for? And, you know, if you're an older millennial, you're in your 40s. That doesn't feel very good, having to be propped up by mom and dad at that age. So, you know, you've got to think about that kind of stuff. How are you going to get yourself out of the hole that you created? It doesn't mean you don't go in the hole. It just means you got to have a plan to get out of it as well. And the bottom line that I said from the beginning is that having a good idea of what your financial picture is key to getting through all of this without the extra turmoil that just not knowing anything about your finances can cause. You can put yourself in such a bad situation from that. So make sure, if you are getting divorced, even if you're just a happy couple right now, make sure you have an emergency fund that you both can access, and make sure your emergency fund is enough to get you both through something if something should happen. Also, make sure you do have some retirement in your name. Don't just rely on one person's retirement. Even if you're a stay-at-home parent, you can open certain types of accounts in your name, and you should look into that. It should not be the burden of one person. Not just that, if you are happily married, do you really want to do that to your spouse and just have them be the only one that's in charge of your retirement, your financial freedom, that's not nice to do to them. Come on, we do better than that. I'm married. I wouldn't do that to my husband. All right, and understand the difference between joint and separate property, how they work. How is your house titled? Who's on the mortgage? Who's on the student debt? All of that stuff's really important. And understanding that, career progression can make a difference. And you might not be where you want to be. And can you survive on your own, on your income, without any help? Because to rely heavily on what you're going to get from the divorce, I see that as a big mistake for people, especially women. I just think that doesn't work out real well. And I've seen people who got divorced 10 years ago who financially just cannot get ahead. It can really cause problems. So you want to be very considerate and very thoughtful before you make this decision. This is not an emotional decision that you can just fly off the handle and say, I hate you, I want a divorce. Because it's not just about the emotional connection, although that's what we think of our relationships as. It is a commingling of your financial lives. And that commingling has to come apart. If you don't know how it's going to come apart seamlessly, take a bit and figure that out before we just jump into an emotional decision that could really, really put you on a bad course for the rest of your life if your goal is financial freedom like most people. So I'm sorry that was a downer of a video. I'm sorry, but I'm not sorry because it's important. And my job is to make people uncomfortable sometimes when it comes to their finances, and I probably did that for you. So mission accomplished, I guess, right? I will make sure that the next video is much happier, but I hope this helped you if you are happily married, single, or contemplating a divorce. Hopefully this information motivated you to start looking at your finances and taking it seriously, understanding where you are. And maybe that means getting a professional like a financial advisor to help you with that. So until next time, stay strong, be happy out there, and we will see you in the next video. Bye-bye.